Hey, welcome back to the First Gems podcast where culture, community, and the come up collide. Today, we're joined by someone who is so special to me, whose work is rewriting what it means to thrive in academia as a Black woman. She's the founder of Your Dissertation Sis, a space created to help Black women scholars finish their dissertations and reclaim their voices in the process. She's also a researcher, speaker, and advocate for Black girls' safety, healing, and educational justice. My dear friend, my sister, Dr. Jamelia Harris.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me.
how you feeling? Thank you for coming.
Oh my gosh, this is a full circle moment. You always have those friends where your conversations are just so on point that you say to yourself, we should be recording and documenting this. So to be in y'all's space and to get to share my story really means so much to me.
Yes, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Like, we're super excited to dig in today. So I feel like we have a lot to cover today. I do want to take it back to just the early days. Take us back to young Jamelia. Like, what were your earliest dreams before you became Dr. Harris?
Whew. Oh my goodness. That is such a good question. So, from as early as I can remember, I have always really embraced education. And I can remember being 5 years old. My dream was to one day go to USC or UCLA. And that was always so interesting as I reflect back because I'm a first generation college student. So no one before me in my family, in my immediate family, had went to college. But I always really held on to that dream of going to UCLA or USC. And I thought that I wanted to be a pediatrician. And a big part of that was having a Black woman doctor growing up and really getting to see what it felt like to have a doctor that looked like me at a young age. But when I went to college, I was introduced to the possibilities of really becoming a doctorate and maybe not practicing medicine in the traditional sense, but still really getting to make an impact. So I would say that from a very young age, I always really embraced the idea that one day I would be a doctor. I also really embraced the idea that one day I would be an educator. I can remember I would line my teddy bears up in the backyard, and my parents had gotten this curriculum book from a thrift store, and I would like plan lessons and be leading my own classes in the backyard. So education, becoming a doctor, I think from a young age that was a vision that I had for my life. And I really love this podcast and just the emphasis of first generation being the first gems, because I think for me so much of my own identity comes from being a first generation college student, but also being the daughter of Jamaican immigrants, and really just thinking about what education meant to me. My father's side, he's Jamaican immigrant, as I mentioned, and he would always emphasize to me just the importance of education. I can remember we would be driving down the streets, and he would ask me how to spell the name of a certain business that we were driving past, or he'd point to street signs and he'd ask me to pronounce what the street name was. And he had this saying that learning is better than silver and gold. Silver and gold may vanish away, but a good education will never decay. And I can remember I would be so annoyed when I was younger. He always repeated this to me. It felt like, he would come to my parent teacher meetings and he'd be like, this is what I taught her. This is why she's such a good student, because from the young age I've been teaching her this. But it really became stuck to just embrace that education was something that no one could ever take away from you. And I think from that really emphasizing that education was something that really was mine, shaped so much of who I am today and shaped so much of my journey of becoming Dr. Jamelia.
Wow. Wait, can you run that back like what your dad said? Because I want it to stick in my head,
Oh,
Like, I
child.
need the
And the urge of me mocking his accent, and how he actually would say it. But he would always say, learning is better than silver and gold. Silver and gold may vanish away, but a good education will never decay. And that was like, from the time I was 5 years old, that was every single day. It was repeated and ingrained in my mind. And maybe he did that intentionally.
From that, I take away the greatest investment is the investment you make in yourself, to your point of like,
Mm.
no one can take your education away. So putting that investment in yourself, like, what can they can't do nothing because it's already done.
Hello.
Period. We dropping a whole bunch of gems early. I'd love to see it. Like, I'm gonna write that down and stick that somewhere and tell my nieces and nephews because I don't know, something with the kids these days, everybody wants to be an influencer, which there's nothing wrong with that, but we need some back. Yeah. Yeah, we
We
need
need
some
to
plan
influence
A's through
people, but
Z's.
the purposeful influencers.
Exactly. What are you influencing? Exactly. So yeah, you lightly touched on your Jamaican background and how that um really drilled into you the power of education. Like, how do you think just learning about your father's cultural heritage, how did that shape your work ethic and just who you are as a person?
Oh my gosh. And I'm sure that y'all can relate to this being Nigerian American and just realizing how much we take for granted as Americans, like going back to Jamaica and knowing that things that like having to pay for my own education in a public education system, something that I take for granted. That is really, I think for me, knowing that I no longer have to struggle or navigate a lot of the barriers that those who came before me have to sacrifice really is something that continues to inspire me every day. And I will be honest in saying I don't have the best relationship with my father, but I think really just knowing what he sacrificed to give me the life that we have in America and getting to just see how much hard work that he poured into really providing that access to me. I always tell Tanina about the story of how when I was applying for college, my dad is someone who's always like really relied on manual labor. He's a mechanic. And I can remember that he was like out there collecting bottles and cans to pay for my college applications. And that was something that really, really stuck with me of just thinking about what it meant to him to know that his daughter was going to go on and be the first in maybe his bloodline to pursue a college education, let alone a PhD someday. Um, but I think that it just really getting to know the sacrifice of those who've come before me is something that inspires me. And I can remember going back to Jamaica and just getting to see the little Black girls walking with their uniforms and imagining like, wow, if I would have been born here, this would have been my life. And really wanting to be able to create an impact where Black girls don't have to struggle in order to receive the education that they deserve. That's something that I would say really inspires me. But I think all around just being first generation, that oftentimes we can carry that burden of pressure. I remember going to college. I was a biochemistry major. And for me, I can remember one of the scariest moments in my college experience was when I made the decision to call my parents and tell them that I had switched my major from biochemistry to Black studies. Tanina's shaking her head because she know I like that was
We
for
were
me.
both
I was
going
just
through
like,
that. Yeah, I get you. We were
I was
both
like,
going through that.
what? I think it was at the same time, right? Like we both had went into college really. And what was your major when you started out? What
Um,
was your
I
major,
was
Tanina?
I was in sciences, technically undeclared, but I was in the natural sciences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't even get to like you have those people who like take their first calculus and biology class and maybe they fail and they decide I didn't even get to that point. I just fell in love with Black studies. So it was
Yeah.
like literally the summer before college officially began, I did this program at UC Santa Barbara called the Summer Education. It's like the Summer Education Start program or something like that, where you begin a little bit early. And freshman summer start, that's what it's called. And I took my first Black Studies 1 class and I fell in love. And Kalara, we probably met around that time because I think that you were there for the summer. And, so
Yeah.
full circle moment. But that was really for me just such a scary moment, this idea that I wasn't going to become a doctor in the traditional sense. And I remember calling my parents and they were like, we expected you to change your major. Like, we didn't go to college, but we watch movies. We know that people change their majors. So whatever makes you happy, and just having that affirmation, and not feeling like I was letting them down, even though I knew how much they sacrificed, really is something that gave me the courage to pursue things that maybe went against the grain. And that also is something I would say that really shaped education for me as well.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that you found your purpose early, even though you probably didn't know where it was going to lead initially majoring in Black studies, but like I just can't think of a more fitting field of study for you. Like I just like it just makes sense. Like I love when things just make sense for people, like creatively, professionally, educationally, it just all makes sense. And it's like I love that you discovered that early when you did. And look, you have your coaching program now, and but you've been advocating for Black women since day one, since
Thank
as long
Before
as
it was
I've known you. Yeah.
before it was a thing, before it was like a performative thing, like you've
Yeah.
always been.
Yes,
you.
yes. And Black people in general, not just Black women, but like I know you have an emphasis on Black women, but you've just been advocating for Black people in general, like, and I love that. And just yeah, everything makes sense. Anyway, I'm like, girl, I could just spend the whole podcast singing your praises because you deserve it. You truly do. But when you got your PhD, I could think of a lot of things that I was doing at 22, and getting a PhD wasn't one of them. So, what was that experience like for you at such a young age to have your PhD? Like, l- walk us through your journey and getting that and how you felt in that moment.
Absolutely. So I mentioned I had always imagined becoming a doctor, but I thought of being a doctor as very liminal. So I wasn't thinking that it was a possibility that I could become a doctor and teach Black studies. And going to college really expanded me because for the first time I was around so many Black doctors, especially as a Black studies major. And one of the things in my freshman year, lived on the Black Scholars Hall at UC Santa Barbara, which is a freshman experience floor that is really rooted in connecting students across the African diaspora. And our resident assistant, she was involved in the McNair Scholars Program, and she was someone who I really looked up to. And so the McNair Scholars Program is a program that supports first generation students in pursuing doctoral research. So I knew I wanted to get involved in that. And it's almost like a pipeline. So I would say I didn't really have a choice to go on to the PhD. It was just kind of like ingrained that this is what happens after you graduate from UC Santa Barbara, that you are expected to go on to pursue a PhD. And so when I had finished my program, I was thinking about a number of different programs, but ultimately ended up pursuing my PhD at UCLA in the education department. And that was always a dream university for me, as I mentioned. But I think that it was a place that like I was already carrying so much imposter syndrome about. Tanina knows UCLA was a dream university for me, but I didn't even apply there as an undergraduate because I honestly didn't think that I was ever qualified enough to get into that school. And I think it was like the subtle and not so subtle ways that we can internalize messages about our belonging in certain spaces, especially when people who don't look like this are the majority. And when I started my PhD program, well, before I even started, I remember I got a call from a professor in the department, and he asked me to come down to the university, and I'm thinking like, "Ooh, I got in." They are calling me to tell me in person that I got in. And when I got there, he was like, Jamelia, so many of the professors in this department really believe in you. We believe that you're capable. You have such a strong record, but we're concerned because you're just a little bit too young. And we really just wonder, have you thought about getting more life experience, more professional experience? We would really love to, accept you into the program maybe after you get another year of teaching under your belt. And I remember just really firmly advocating for myself, advocating that I had been doing this work as a McNair scholar and that I was more than prepared for the PhD. And I got into the program, but something that stuck with me was really the words that this professor said, which was that no one was going to be there to hold my hand. And I think in that moment of really just hearing this from a professor who maybe was well intentioned, but who was so respected in the field that no one was going to be there to hold my hand, really set the stage of what it means to be a Black woman in academia. That we are expected to be twice as brilliant while receiving half of the support. And if we ask for support, then people are going to look at us like, girl, do you even go here? Do you belong here? And so I had a choice of, really internalizing that and allowing myself to shrink and allowing myself maybe to be afraid to ask for help because I didn't want to be seen as someone who wasn't capable or worthy. But what I did instead was while I was at UCLA, I started an organization called UCLA Sisters in Scholarship with some of my homegirls, and the acronym stands for SIS. And when I started that space, I had always just envisioned that it would grow into like a national movement. But really, it was a space that brought together Black women across UCLA and provided that kind of space where we belong from the start, right? And that for me was something that really held me in the journey to have other Black women, whether they were doing their master's, their PhD, but Black women who were on the same journey as me that really just affirmed my belonging. That really meant so much to me. And I would say that was a big part of what held me through being a 22-year-old Black woman who had just so much to learn about myself and really believed in myself, but just needed a little bit of extra support. And it also planted the seed for Write Your Dissertation Sis.
Wow. This like journey, like I see a really clear running like red thread between like every single thing that you've done like up until where you are now. And what I love most is how you see for yourself, like if I need this space created, like you don't wait for someone to create it, you take the initiative and you create it for yourself, but then also it impacts the community around you as well. So that's amazing, girl. Like
Thank
flowers,
you,
just
sis. Thank you.
um,
I appreciate that.
um,
And I think that that's so much of what we as Black women do, is that we are naturally connectors, that we are naturally people who hold our community down and really being able, like you said, I always think of like the Shirley Chisholm reference of like, if we don't have a seat at the table, then bring a folding chair. But sometimes we have to build our own tables where we belong from the start. And that was so much of what I envisioned with UCLA Sisters in Scholarship. I look back and I see Facebook messages where I was like sending messages to people at Georgia State University who maybe had a program that was focused on Black women. And I'm like, hey, y'all want to do a virtual meetup? And to now see that space evolving to where Write Your Dissertation Sis, and I know we're going to talk more about that, is connecting Black women nationally is really something that continues to just be so beautiful to witness.
yeah. So yeah, let's talk more about write your dissertation, sis. Like I want to get into the work and obviously the why for us is pretty clear, but if you could just maybe just explain a little bit more about, those moments where you struggled and how it inspired you to create, write your dissertation, sis.
Absolutely. So, Write Your Dissertation Sis, it really began, as I mentioned, I mean, the vision I think was already there. I had already this mindset that one day I was gonna evolve UCLA Sister and Scholarship into a national space for connecting Black women. But it was over the holiday last year of 2024 where I was at home and I had this idea. And initially, it started out, the name that I had come up with was like Align Your Purpose. And I had this vision that I wanted to connect Black women who were really doing work that was rooted in their purpose, especially in academia. And I started playing around with the names, and I remembered that sis was something that meant so much more than just UCLA Sisters and Scholarship, but it was connected to a mentor that I had, and maybe Kalaria, you know her, at UC Santa Barbara, Dr. Claudine Michelle. And
Oh,
yeah, she was my McNair mentor at UCLA, at UC Santa Barbara through the McNair Scholars Program. And she was a Haitian Black woman. She would always call me her sister in scholarship. And I really held on to that. I think so much about just the contributions that Black women have made in my journey and what it means for us to view mentorship in a way of sisterhood, right? Because we oftentimes think of mentorship as like top down, but what does it mean when we learn from each other in ways that are reciprocal? And so that was really what inspired me to land on the name of Write Your Dissertation Sis. So I literally created an Instagram page, and within, I would say, about 2 weeks, the interest just grew really fast. I made the decision, I'm just going to turn this into a coaching program. And the story is always like, when I think about it, it's really incredible how fast, but it was like within 2 weeks, I made the decision to announce a coaching program, and I filled my entire program with 10 Black women scholars 2 weeks later. And we launched our first coaching program January 17th of 2025. And since then, we've been able to walk alongside 30 plus Black women scholars through our coaching program who are navigating the final stretch of their dissertation journey. And really, this program, I think what really makes it beautiful is that it's intentionally designed for us and by us. And so my program is really structured around bringing in sisterhood, affirmation, collective care, but also really thinking more about how do we bring clarity to some of the things that come up in our dissertation journey that oftentimes are really what we regard as like hidden curriculum. So through this program, our signature program is a 6-month coaching and wellness experience where Black women who are especially like 6 to 12 months away from defending their dissertation are working together through writing accountability sessions. They're getting feedback. This past week, we actually just had a workshop where we brought in Dr. Marlene Francois Madden, who is a clinical therapist who's been featured on Forbes and Therapy for Black Girls and a number of other spaces to really talk about what does it mean for us to pour into ourselves along the journey and to prevent burnout. So we're really thinking more intentionally about like not only what do Black women need in the dissertation journey, but what do they need as they're building towards legacy. And that is so much about what our program is emphasizing is how do we create a space for Black women who are doing meaningful work to thrive together and to support one another in their most sacred journey.
wow, that's so deep. Like, wow, building legacy. No, that's so true. And that sisterhood is so important. I think Tanita and I can see like how it works in, our relationship, our family relationship, like just having that community of like women who look like you and who relate to you and who are going through it just like you. Like it's so important to be able to lean on each other in that way. Um,
Absolutely.
I love that you
yeah.
mentioned the wellness piece of your coaching program because that is tied to a lot of things that, like, that part seems to always be left out when you're speaking about anything professional, especially for Black women. Like, we always think that we have to, like, or it's not that we think that we have to overwork ourselves. That's what it takes to prove your worth sometimes, you know? That's just how different structures are set up for us. So the fact that you have wellness as a part of that, like, I really love that. I really love that. I think it's very important and very
Yeah, it's
impactful.
essential. It is absolutely essential.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've also touched a little bit on the need for, or the feeling of Black women feeling like they need to be, perfect, and especially just going about, different parts of academia, how they have to work 2 times as hard to kind of be received on the same level as, their peers and things. So how could you explain a little bit more how that shows up in academia for?
Oh my goodness. Yes. And this is probably like the deepest work that I support Black women in overcoming is what I would call Black girl perfectionism. And I think so much of it is connected to what you just named, is that feeling of like, I mean, we hear that from the time that we're like 5 years old, that we need to be twice as good to get half as far. But really, when we are navigating these spaces where we don't often see people who look like us, and we're already internalizing messages that maybe that means that we're not worthy of being in this space, that so much of it we can put ourselves under, but also others put us under a microscope that really causes us to just internalize this sense that we have to overperform to prove that we're worthy. And graduate school is already a high stress environment that in and of itself can be really harmful to Black women's mental health and well-being. And we know that for Black women especially, that we are oftentimes navigating other things like our family stressors, we're caregiving, we are navigating racism, sexism. We're oftentimes the only ones in our programs, right? And so I think really having that space where Black women are affirmed that they belong is essential to combating some of that. And we especially know that for Black women, that Black women earn only 4.4% of all doctoral degrees in the United States. So we're not only navigating the imposter syndrome, but systematically there are clear signs that we're not, these institutions weren't designed for our thriving. And while we're simultaneously carrying that pressure, many of us are also the first in our families to go on to college. And so our families don't always know how to support us. Like, I can count the number of times that I was in my PhD over the 4 years that I got a text from my mom, and my mom's like, "What are you studying again?" I'm trying to tell my coworker. And, she means well, she wants to support me, but she doesn't understand, right? And so really not always having those spaces in our family and our community that can support us while we're simultaneously navigating these environments where we don't see ourselves, where we don't feel like people are rooting for us to thrive. And that really compounds Black women's isolation that they experience. And so perfectionism, I actually learned from a mentor that perfectionism is connected to anxiety, but it becomes the survival mechanism. And it's something that's entirely unsustainable. But what we really normalize, one of the first things that we do in all of our sessions is we start out with grounding affirmations, that we belong, that we deserve to be in these spaces, that our voice matters, that we are writing towards legacy, and that this is going to benefit Black girls and Black women for generations to come, right? And so really affirming our belonging, counteracting some of those messages that we don't belong, that our voices aren't academic enough because we speaking in our mother tongue and we decide to use slang every now and then, right? And really just this idea that we have to prove that we're worthy of having our scholarship affirmed as something that's considered intellectual or valued and honored as knowledge. So that's a big part of the work that I would say that I do. I oftentimes meet Black women who are just so crippled by perfectionism that like they don't even want to write a single word on the page, because in their mind it has to be perfect before they can share it with anyone. And really so much of that is allowing us to see that we can show up imperfectly. We can be messy. We can, figure it out along the way. But if we're so afraid to take that first step and to make that mistake, then it really just keeps us stuck, and we can be our own worst enemy in that way if we allow perfectionism to cause us to shrink.
Girl, you speaking to me right now.
Literally, that's what I said. Literally, I don't know if you saw me on mute. I was like, yep, yep. Like, especially the part about perfectionism stifling your productivity. I've struggled with that my entire life. I feel like I have notes and notes of, I'm sure like so many people listening to this can relate. I'm sure, Kalaria, maybe you could relate as well. Like, I have notes and notes of ideas, new things, blah, blah, but just never starting because of just like, I want it to be right. Because if it doesn't, then I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm going to look like I'm an amateur, like things like that. And you spoke to so many of Black women's souls who are tapping into this. Y'all better tap into this. Uh, right. But like you really did. And even to the fact that, and the alignment, everything that you're saying as we talk to you more and more, like it's just so much alignment here. The first episode that we put out was Perfectionism is Ruining Your Life, wasn't it? Wasn't that our first
Oh yeah.
episode? Yes, that was literally our first episode. And I feel like that catapulted why we tell our stories as first generation creatives, millennials, professionals, etc., Gen Z, whatever. Like that, getting over that mindset of like striving to be perfect will block you, will ruin you. Yeah. So as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God, that was like our very first, yeah, episode
And
on the podcast, and literally conversations we used to have with each other on the phone about, oh, like we want to be successful, we want to be something, and we want to do it right. So you're speaking to so much of our souls, and this is just a healing conversation, and your coaching is more than coaching, it's healing. Like, shoot, I ain't got no dissertation, but if you have an
I
extra
know.
little memories, I can.
This I feel like it applies to like corporate, like just
Yes.
everything, not just academia too, where a lot of what you're doing is applicable to just like everyday, like, life aspects. And I think it's also interesting too how you said the professor said that perfectionism is attached to anxiety. I'm like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. And like that makes a lot of sense as to why we stop ourselves, because we're anxious about like maybe it's what people think, maybe it's like I'm an imposter, so it's just making me anxious and I don't want to move forward with this.
Yep.
So I'm like, wow, like the everything's just making so much sense.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that for me, when she said that, I was like, wow, mind blown. Because I
Mind
hadn't
blown. And
thought
some
about
people,
that in the
yeah.
sense, it makes so much sense that we are
Mhm.
overthinking, that we are so fixated on how others perceive us, that we begin to like internalize these ideas that people aren't seeing us as not enough. Yeah, that is definitely anxiety. That's anxious thinking.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. And it's such a simple way to phrase it. I love when things are put in such a simple way and you're like, duh, duh, that makes so much sense. That's definitely what I get from that. But yes, write your dissertation, sis. If you didn't hear earlier, Jamelia's coaching program, but it's also like healing. You're building a legacy. I think you should like put legacy builder as part of your title, because that's what you're doing for yourself and others. You talked about the importance of the pipeline, which I think that is something that affects us in the Black community, is not having the oversight to see that pipeline, to see just the direct path to get somewhere. And I feel like it's not noticed until later. Maybe in your 30s, they're like, oh, like, I would have known this, I would have done this, which got me this, and which got me this. So you being able to see that pipeline early is beautiful because it led you to where you are. But now you're also creating that pipeline for other people, and you're also contributing to other people's legacy. So yeah, I just want to, give you your flowers for that, because that's amazing. And yeah. You are a legacy builder, and you're going to be an instrumental part of other people's stories, the people that take your coaching program. So, the same way that you communicated to us, the people who've inspired you and shaped you, like you're that in someone else's story. Like, that's a big deal. That's not light, that is not light work. But yes, on the topic of legacy and just like your why and write your dissertation, sis, I do want to ask, what is one story from your program that reminds you why this work matters?
Oh my goodness. Whew, there's so many stories. And I really love that you just mentioned the legacy because that's so much of the work that we do. I actually changed my title officially to dissertation to legacy coach because so much of our core belief at Write Your Dissertation Sis is that your dissertation is the foundation of your legacy. And for so many of us who do this work, we do this work from a place that's deeply personal, that is rooted in our lived experience. And I think about just really, especially in this moment right now that we are seeing across the nation, that unemployment, especially among Black women scholars, has been at an all-time high, that it is so important for us to be emphasizing ways that Black women can build legacy on their own terms. And so much of my own conditioning in academia was intended to be, once I finished my PhD, that I would go on to the tenure track. So when I think about a memory that really inspires me to this day, I think about coaching a Black woman who was in the final stretch of her dissertation journey. She's a mother scholar, and she was so excited. She had gotten an interview at a university down south, and she was going to be a final round candidate for a professor position at this university. And just days before, I think even the day before, she received a call from that university that basically they had discontinued the entire line of work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was like going to be a program that's emphasizing DEI and STEM education, and she was basically told that her flight was canceled. And from that moment on, I knew that I was going to have to completely transition the way that I approached coaching, that it wasn't enough to just help Black women get to the finish line, but that I really needed to be helping them to pivot and helping them to see the impact in their work beyond academia. Because especially right now in this climate, academia is not a place that's really predictable or guaranteed. And I think a lot of times programs, especially PhD programs, can false promise that becoming a tenure track faculty member after you graduate is guaranteed. And then we connect so much of our worth, our scholarship, to this vision of what it means for us to be a successful PhD once we finish. And so working with her, getting to help her to really translate her research and translate it into positions that were, maybe not aligned with what she initially imagined for herself, and getting to see her continue to build on her own legacy. Recently, she got an award for publishing some work from her dissertation, and was able to really just find her own path beyond what was initially intended. That's a story that really stands out to me. I think that for so many of us, that when we are imagining our legacy, I always tell people that it's the way that the story that people remember about you and the story that they tell about you when you're not in the room. And what I always encourage Black women is to really imagine, what is that story that you want people to tell? Because regardless of your title, regardless of the institution that you're connected to, you are still your best thing. And you really have to have that brand identity of who you are as a Black woman, as a scholar, and really the legacy and way that you want to be remembered, regardless of where you end up, being hired at, because that is something that's ingrained in our identity and how we show up in this world. So I think every single time a Black woman tells me that she feels like she sees herself more clearly, or maybe she didn't see herself as a scholar, and being in this space has affirmed her and really embracing that she is a scholar. Every time that a Black woman continues to write after she submitted her dissertation, and now she's creating knowledge that is making an impact in our community, that's something that really sticks with me. And I just love to see other Black women living out the calling that God put over their lives. And I really think that that's what this community is about.
You found your calling, and now you others as well reach theirs.
Absolutely.
So
That's what it's all about. And y'all are doing the same.
You. Yeah, I love that I love that you mentioned when you were describing legacy, you didn't tie it to a job. You made it about the person and the impression that they leave on others. That's so powerful. Like,
Mhm.
just to be candid, and y'all know I'm going through my unemployment season right now, and I really had to like take a step back and really figure out who I am outside of working or what I do, you know? I think there's a sense of security attached to your career. It's kind of your social proof of like, oh, I am who I say I am. But when you strip all that away, you still have a legacy. It's about the impact that you're making on other people, on this world, like beyond what you do for a living, because your job can be taken away from you anytime, but you're still like a whole being. And I think that part is really important. And I think that's like just, I love that when you describe that you didn't make it about someone's profession or the amount of businesses they have or the amount of houses or cars or and even like
Yeah.
generationally we always learn that it's about other people after you, which it can be, but it's still you and like the impression that you leave on this world. So I love that.
Mhm. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And I think I love what you just said, that last part of, we always think about the people who are coming up after you or the people who come up before you. But sometimes it's the people who come up alongside us. And I was reflecting this morning about just like what it means to me, this full circle moment of me and Tanina getting to have a conversation. I know we didn't say this on the podcast, but me and Tanina have been friends for 15 plus years, I would say. And, getting to see my friend living out her purpose, being bold and audacious, and, really getting to cultivate something so beautiful with her cousins, her beautiful cousins. That just means so much. And this is your legacy. This is something that's going to live on for so many years. This is something that I'm having a bad day, I'm looking in Spotify to find that podcast that speaks directly to what I need to hear in that moment. And I really hope that you're also embracing the legacy that you are creating, because we really have to see ourselves beyond the titles. Those things can be stripped away from us with a blink of an eye. And I really want all Black women to see themselves clearly. And I think that so much of that really requires us to take a step back and say, who am I before people told me who I should be, or before people told me what I was because of the title or affiliation that I have, and allowing ourselves to lean more into that, especially as we really think about the impact that we're making, because the impact doesn't stop. You still continue to do the work. It might be in different spaces and capacities. I know you're doing work right now where maybe, you're volunteering your time, but you're still making an impact, right? And so it's really so important for us to embrace and honor that, because it's also sacred and it's a part of what brings healing to the world.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I don't think we take enough time to reflect on the things that, we do in our day-to-day that may be impacting somebody that, I don't know, we just don't really maybe think it's impacting anybody when it really is. So that's always, nice to just think about. So for you, how do you, as someone who freely gives and shows up for others, how do you protect your peace and like, kind of just stay grounded in, who you are and what you're doing?
I love that question. And so much of what I really emphasize is that as Black women, we got to put ourselves first, because at the end of the day, a job is a job. That's one part. And we cannot show up as our best selves if we're not pouring into ourselves. And so for me, self-care and just really my own practices around taking care of myself, that's something that's a priority for me. That's something that's non-negotiable. I was just telling Tanina, this upcoming week, I took the entire week off of coaching at my full-time job, and I booked myself some spa appointments. I said, you know what, I'm going to try and get into a therapy session because I've been missing out on therapy, and simultaneously just trying to get through a season that's been, a little bit heavy beyond like the spotlight. I think that can always be like the challenging part, is like yes, we can have so much that's going right, but then also those moments where we're like, whoo, okay, I feel like I really need to like pay attention to this. And I got to that moment where I was just noticing that I've been having some days where, maybe I'm not really able to appreciate everything that's in front of me. And I think that so much of doing mission driven work can blur those boundaries, where we connect so much of our identity to the work that we do because it's personal. So beyond coaching, I also work as a senior director of research at a nonprofit that is really dedicated to girls and gender expansive young people who are in the system. And especially right now with everything that's happening in the government, it's been just a really heavy time. And so when I made the decision to take this upcoming week off, it was something that I honestly internally had resistance toward, but also there were some ways that externally there was some resistance to me taking time off too. But I really see my own rest and my own personal care as my strategy of being able to show up and do the work. And so I always think of that as like my first priority and my first commitment to show up for myself so that I can better show up for others. So I have like those non-negotiable things, like waking up in the morning, meditating and praying. Me and Tanina were just talking about our morning routines the other day on the phone, actually. That's funny. It's so funny. We were literally just talking about morning routines on the phone the other day. And making sure I work out before 10 a.m. in the morning. No work before 10 a.m. Like, I don't open a laptop. No work on the weekend at all. This is like the most work thing that I'll do on a weekend is to show up for this podcast. So I think really just having like those clear boundaries and not allowing yourself to feel so connected to the work that you lose sight of prioritizing your own well-being as a self-preservation strategy. So that's for me. I'm probably one of the most self-care kind of girls that you're gonna meet, because I be at the spa.
Yeah, you really are. You do be you any minor inconvenience in life, she's like, girl, I booked this spa for myself. And I love it. I love the self-preservation strategy. I love that term and I love that phrase because we don't think about that enough. We feel like we have to like earn it. Oh, I did all this hard work. Now I'm run down to the ground. Now I deserve to pour into myself. And it shouldn't be that. Any minor, oh my gosh, I was stuck in traffic. I need a massage. Do it. Like if you have the
Life is
capacity, do
hard.
it. Right. We're just out here trying to thrive, literally. Wow. This conversation has been so soul healing. I feel like I use that phrase a lot. Probably should get another one now. But it has though. It really did heal my soul, and I feel like there's a warm embrace around the little black girl in me right now for sure. And I love that I've had you in my corner and I get to share you with more of the world. And you've poured into me a lot over the years. I was telling Jamelia, I was like, you know, I have a Facebook account just because, family from outside the US, just so they know I'm alive, child. But I'm not active on there, so it always sends me like flashback memories, and it's always Jamelia saying something so positive to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I had this in high school. Like, I had somebody in my corner pouring into me, and I feel like Jamelia has always believed in me more than I believe in myself, like, for real. Like, whew.
Girl,
But yeah,
mutual. Mutual. Don't
no,
start calling me out.
I'm trying to cough it out. No, she really has. She really has. But yeah, I just want to definitely thank you for that. And you've dropped a lot of gems throughout this entire episode. And initially I was going to ask what advice you have for someone who is writing their dissertation, but this conversation has transformed into something more powerful than that. So, and I know you talked about legacy a lot and you did drop gems on legacy. So, I do want to continue on with that and ask what is a gem or advice that you have for somebody who wants to build their legacy but has no idea where to start?
Ooh, that is so important. I love that closing question. So I have a few thoughts about that. And I love that you're also expanding this conversation beyond the dissertation because so much of this is really about purpose. And I mentioned that when I was first dreaming up Write Your Dissertation Sis, that I almost called it Align Your Purpose because that was really the vision that God gave me, that I wanted to create a space for Black women who were living out the callings over their life. And so I would say whether you're writing a dissertation or pursuing your life's purpose, that one, you don't have to show up perfectly. And two, you don't have to do it alone. I think the thing that makes me and Tanina's friendship so beautiful, and we were having this conversation of just what it means to have a friend over 15 years and to reflect on some of the conversations that maybe we were having as 10th grade Black girls in our geometry or calculus classroom versus the conversations that we have now where it's like, wow, what's filling your cup this season? What's your morning routine looking like? What are some of your financial goals? Is that we were always aligned in our purpose and our values. And I think being able to find those people and holding them close is so necessary to really being able to carry forward your legacy, to have those people who are in your corner, who see you better than you see yourself, who really inspire you to see yourself more clearly. And Tanina says, I've been that person for her. She's always been that person for me. We've always been the Black girls who are standing up for the Black girls getting bullied because maybe they edges wasn't laid, or we've always been those Black girls. And so to see who we are now as Black women who are still continuing to live that value and that love out loud is really something that inspires me so much. But I would especially say to Black women who are really pursuing their purpose, that every single time that you say yes to what God placed on your heart, you are really living out your purpose and your calling. And I think that a question I get asked often, especially about Write Your Dissertation Sis, is why it came together so quickly. And honestly, I think that a big part of it was that I stopped allowing my fear to show up perfectly, stop me from pursuing the purpose that God had over my life. And one of the affirmations that I always leave my coaching clients with is that everything that you need is already within you. And that's an affirmation. And when I was writing my dissertation, I would write it on sticky notes and just put it all over my screen because I always got into this place of feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know enough to write a dissertation, which is essentially writing a book. And really just being able to trust that God would give me the words that I needed to say as I was writing my dissertation, being able to trust that God will give me the vision that I need to become a first-time entrepreneur and create a community that's now making such an impact in the lives of Black women across the nation. And we got some international scholars too. Those are things that really require me to step away from fear. And so I would say to a Black woman, do it afraid, do it in community, and do it messy, because everything that you need is already within you.
That's beautiful.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I felt that. I really did. So what's next for Write Your Dissertation Sis? What is something that you want to share with people listening? And then where can people find you, find Write Your Dissertation Sis? Any announcements? Go for it.
Absolutely. So right now, what's coming up for Write Your Dissertation Sis? So what I can say on the record is that we are preparing to launch our winter cohort, and our cohort is essentially a 6-month coaching and wellness experience for Black women scholars who are especially at the final stage of their dissertation journey. So this is going to be our third cohort to date, and we typically have anywhere from 10 to 15 Black women scholars, all working towards the same goal, all on the same timeline, around the same timeline, and really just providing a space for Black women to be held and supported in navigating that final stretch of the journey. So that's one part. We are currently, we have 10 Black women who've enrolled in our January 2026 cohort. We are taking about 5 more in the cohort before we close the doors. So I'm really looking forward to that. And what I can say vaguely is that we're also getting ready to start a national partnership with a major organization. I've just signed the contract, but still keeping my lips sealed about the specific partner until I make my official announcement, where we're going to really be providing some deeper support for women who are really thinking more about the next steps in their career trajectory. So I'm really excited about that as well, and just being able to connect our mission with an even bigger audience. And one final thing that we have is in February, we're going to be doing a Black Women's Job Market Retreat that is really geared at helping Black women doctorates and recent graduates and pivoting beyond the academy. So that's something that is really helping Black women to not only translate their skills to applying for those academic jobs, but also thinking about, like, how can I maybe start consulting? How can I maybe create my own LLC and think about some of the things that I can do beyond what's traditionally encouraged with a doctoral degree? So those are some of the things that are coming up that I'm really excited about.
Amazing, amazing stuff. So, no gems were left on the table in this episode. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that we spoke to you when we did. And thank you for dropping your knowledge, dropping your wisdom, dropping your warmth, because that part was really felt throughout this episode for sure. Love you down, girl. And cheers to like 50 more, 30 more, 40 more years, 100 more years if we make it that long, um, of 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 purposeful friendship. I love you, girly,
Love you.
and I'm so proud of you. Yeah, and thank
Oh
you
my
for pouring into us today.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so thanks, listeners. Until the next time, we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.